Great to be back. Love Sales Confidence, and kudos to the whole Sales Confidence team for pulling this off in this time. Absolutely amazing event. So without further ado, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, in 2013, I made a life-changing decision to join AppDynamics as their first UK sales rep. Quite frankly, because I was seeking personal and professional growth, and I was tired of being surrounded by a lot of mediocrity and a lot of fixed mindset people after having spent about 5 years at big tech. And in 2017, just 4 years later, we'd taken AppDynamics from doing 80 million in revenue to selling it to Cisco for $3.7 billion, which at the time was the largest M&A multiple based on revenue. I attribute my success and the success of the company at large to the fact that the sales leadership had obsessed about developing sales as a science, which really came from the PTC, John McMahon era playbook, including Medic, which Andy shared earlier, for the modern generation of SaaS sales. And in 2018, James gave me the opportunity to talk about the 3R's at Sales Confidence. Because I talked too much, I only focused on one component of one of the R's, which was ICE: intelligence, character, coachability, experience, and entrepreneurship. I'll elaborate that in more detail. But today, I'll share the executive overview of the sales leadership playbook that has created multiple multi-billion-dollar software companies, but most importantly, has changed the lives of thousands of people, mine included. So, recruitment, retention, revenue. The first point to make is that it's in this order. When you are a sales leader at a company, recruitment always comes first. It is no different from when you're a seller. And if you do not pipeline generate, you have no business. And so the first thing I say to all of my sales leaders is, if you ever stop recruiting, you will fail. And let's talk about some of the tips that I can share from the playbook. The first thing is, how do you look for A players in a market where demand is outstripping supply by 3.8x in many markets, right? Well, one tip, and if you go back and watch the YouTube video from the last Sales Confidence, is I focus on experience last, right? The big mistake that people make when they're hiring is trying to hire sales reps from similar companies and similar positions, and those people are in short supply. So by focusing on intelligence first, character second, coachability third, and entrepreneurship fourth, you'll be able to find people that you can mold into A players. But you've got to be able to pitch yourself. What is your personal brand? What is your personal pitch? And what is your story? And then be able to pitch the company second. Don't do it the other way around. And so how are you going to build your personal brand? You've got to be focusing on things like blogs and articles and the way that you interact with social. And when you get these resumes, how are you filtering them out so you're not spending 8 hours a week meeting people that you're never, ever going to want to hire, right? That's a huge time suck. And so one of the things I advocate for is, just like we would do PG Mondays or PG days in sales, for sales leaders, it's hiring manager PG Wednesday and Friday, right? Take 4 hours on Wednesday, take 4 hours on Friday, and make those times protected so that none of your sales teams are scheduling over them. They are sacred, they are private, they do not move. And then in order to be as effective as possible, thinking about recruiters, internal and external, the same way you would think about customer champions in deals. Because quite frankly, you need your internal and external recruiters to be productive. You cannot do this on your own. And you have to think about their personal win, their professional win. You have to think about the deposits that you're making for them. How are you making them look good in front of their leadership in their respective functions? And that's going to come back and that's going to help you. And then finally, the thing that I advocate for is phase 0 and then phase 1 meetings. And a phase 0 is meeting a candidate that you've screened either on the phone or just through the resume. And you sit down and it's casual. It's a coffee. It's not an interview. You know, it's something for you guys just to get to know each other, and asking 2 or 3, maybe 4 killer questions that will help you find if there's cultural alignment at a foundational level, to avoid you going through and avoiding them going through a laborious recruitment process unnecessarily, when ultimately we know that if there's no cultural match, it's going to fail. So these are a handful of tips. And again, these are headlines. But let's talk about retention. How do you, once you recruit these A players, how do you keep them? Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to know them. You've got to not just know them professionally about how much money they want and what kind of comp plan, they're orientated towards, or what their accounts are, or what their deals are. No, you've got to know what's going on in their personal life. And more importantly, just as Simon Sinek says, you've got to know what their why is. I'll never forget a meeting with a sales leader that I had. And it was the first, he came in, he was my boss, he took me out for a coffee, and the first thing he said to me was, how much money do you want to make? And in that moment, I fell flat because that's never been associated with my why. And had he asked me just more probing personal questions about, well, what's important to you, Luke? He would have gotten a much different answer versus, well, I don't know, $1 million. That sounds good, right? And so I think being very insightful and being very intentional with getting to understand people's personal motivations, because they're all different, is the first thing you've got to do when you hire a great person, or any person for that matter. And the second thing you've got to do is measure people on their input, not on their output. Where most sales leaders fail, in my opinion, is they focus too much on the revenue generation aspect of a sales rep, not on the leading indicators like new business meetings, discovery calls, proof of values started. These things that we know are all key leading indicators to drive revenue at the end of the day. And then building a plan around quarterly team training based on a holistic assessment of the skill levels inside the team. And then being very intentional again with, if you've got unique individuals that have unique training requirements, giving them a view of it. Hey, I've identified that you would significantly benefit from, for example, some deeper level training on prospecting. So I'm going to allocate 2 hours this week to work with you intentionally, just you, one-on-one, to help you with that, or pair them up with another leader in the company or another rep. And here's another thing that I think, unfortunately, because of COVID, we've gotten away from, but the 30 minutes in Starbucks before the meeting inside the client office is actually one of the most important interactions that a sales leader can have with their rep, because that's the time to just relax everybody. We're about to go in, we're about to do this big meeting, we've prepared this big presentation, the SE is ready, it's doing demo prep for the 7th time. But that's the time to just relax and just wind down and take an hour to talk about the weekend and what you did last night. And then afterwards, make sure you don't run off and grab a taxi or a train or go off to another Zoom. You spend 30 minutes debriefing with that team member or those team members on how the meeting went, what they could do better. And then finally, start using things like tools. So we've had great success at Instabase using Lattice as a engagement pulse survey technology, as well as getting weekly check-ins from the team, as well as being able to run our one-to-ones in a more structured and recorded way. Finally, revenue, the last thing, just like experience. Yes, we do deal reviews, but have deal sheets. So give the team an understanding of the expectation of the information that you want them to provide for the deal review for you to be at your best, right? And if they don't come provided with that information, then you should really send them away. Because if they fail to prepare for a deal review, then that speaks actually a more problematic truth about their general level of execution. And then PG cadence is making sure that you're driving your teams every single week and inspiring them, not just driving them, but inspiring them to want to prospect with 20% of their time, even when they've got lots of deals on flight. And then finally, the sales execution. And one of the key components of this is give yourself a leading indicator. So RD, regional director, and a leading indicator of attending 6 external client-facing meetings per week. And put it on yourself, which is if you fail to achieve that, then that's a problem. And then obviously QBRs, and a big thing I advocate for is active patch management. If people haven't touched an account and it's been dormant for 4 weeks, then give it to someone else. It's a meritocracy. Reward the people that are prospecting by giving them the dormant good accounts. So recruit the best, hunt and win, find the A players, retain the best, inspire and develop them, and then run the big games yourself, leading in the field. Here's a visual for you, which is one thing I say to all my leaders is control your calendar and don't let it control you. One of the first things I tell my leaders to do is, as an RD, make your calendar private or restrict it to certain people, because you are forever being managed by your team by their whim, versus giving them an allocated block of time, say on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Wednesday, that's the time that you're available to go see clients, because you have to pipeline generate through recruitment and you have to retain. And by the way, you've got a life too. So on the weekend, you need to have one, and delegate everything else because the learning's in their struggle. So if you want to learn more about this amazing playbook that's taking what is already Instabase, $1 billion company, to probably what will be $100 billion valuation, then we're hiring across all roles everywhere in the world. So please go to our careers page. And thank you again, James and team, for the opportunity.